Hello everyone, I'm Tori.
And I'm Kariana.
And welcome to God in All Things. Today we are back after a little extra long break in between episodes. With it being the beginning of the year, we wanted to take a little bit of time, extra time to plan out, and then we just had Christmas activities
stuff,
and
man.
all that drama. So we're done with all of that, and we're back in this with our next Marvel episode, Captain America, which I'm very excited about. But let's start by discussing the film, of course, and then we'll get into our personal thoughts and stuff after that.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have Steve Rogers, who's a sickly, kind of gangly guy who desperately wants to join the army in order to fight Nazi Germany. However, he's rejected over and over until finally given the service opportunity of a lifetime. He's injected with a super soldier serum, giving him superhuman strength, as well as amplifying his already courageous and compassionate nature. He then becomes the face of the United States World War II propaganda. However, he's not the first to receive a version of the serum, and the newly identified Captain America will quickly switch from actor to soldier as he learns firsthand that while good qualities are amplified by the serum, so are bad ones.
And thus begins a big journey for this poor guy, because he has probably one of the sadder origin stories in some ways. As far as, I mean, obviously his powers, maybe not necessarily, but like how he comes into the Avengers is really sad. Like, he's the one that really loses everything. Yeah. So
it's like really simple, so it's easy to forget about, but then when you think about it, you're like, oh, the dude was picked up and transplanted in a world he didn't know anything about or anyone in.
Exactly.
Like, that alone is just, I mean, it's devastating.
Yeah, and with this idea that he'll never be able to go back.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just
it's
like
just over.
He's been transplanted. It's like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, he will never see these people again and never live that life again. And it's a whole new world for him.
Yeah. No, it's awful, really.
It is. Personal experiences. So this one, I can't remember if I saw it before Avengers or not. I think I did, and I liked it, but I wasn't, like, enthralled with Marvel yet, so I wasn't super invested. It was actually the Avengers film, the first Avengers film, that actually made me fall in love with Captain America, like, really, like, attracted to him, like, my teenage crush kind of a thing. Whereas, like, the original movie I enjoyed, but it just didn't hit me that way, I guess. I don't know, as far as making me a fan of his. But I did enjoy the film, and then as I've grown older, I mean, I'm a historical fiction girly. So a superhero movie set in the past during World War II is going to be one that really attracts me in general, and it's going to be something that's a little more within my preferences because I do like that historical setting. So I definitely, coming back to this, I do really enjoy it as a film. I think it's a really well plotted film compared to the Thor movie in particular, but it also just has really interesting characters and character dynamics, and it's just like a classic superhero movie. Like, it's feel good, he's a good guy, he's pure of heart, and he's standing for what's right, and so it's very simple compared to a lot of the other, like, complex issues they deal with as they go along, but it's kind of also refreshing in the way that it is so, like, basic superhero, just have fun, enjoy it, and also just see that even this really good-hearted person has his own struggles and things. And yeah, I really like Captain America, so it was fun to revisit it.
Yeah, I wasn't really a Captain America fan as a teenager, which I think we've probably talked about a couple of times. Yeah, kind of actually the exact thing that you just described, like unattracted me, because he's like boring, you know. It's like he's just like good, and he just does the right thing all the time. And it's very, like, I had the same issue with Superman growing up. That's why I always loved Batman over Superman, right? And then I was a Tony Stark girly over Captain America. I just loved my rich, smart jerk guys. Yeah, so as I've gotten older, I've definitely grown out of that, and I think I would probably say that, like, my Superman and Captain America journey probably paralleled each other very similarly as I learned to, like, see the complexities and the interesting facets, like, underneath their characters, because obviously they have them. They're still, Captain America is a very three-dimensional character. You know, he knows his principles, which maybe that's part of it. As I got older and became a person who is very, very founded on strict principles, I was like, wait a second. And also got more patriotic. I think as I got older, I just became a lot more like Captain America, you know, in a less perfect way.
You know.
And so I can relate to him a lot more and appreciate his values a lot more, for sure. And so that made it easier for me to become more of a fan of him. So yes, definitely a fan now. No issues there. I love Captain America. This was probably my first time rewatching the movie since it came out. So it was very entertaining. I was telling Tori as I was watching it, I was like, what I remember about this movie is that it's set during World War II and Steve Rogers becomes a super soldier. And everything else was brand new. And so it was pretty fun to be able to revisit that and kind of relearn everything, essentially. And yeah, I think it's a good movie. I still don't think I would probably put it at like outstanding, to be honest. Like watching it, I'm like, yeah, that's like a solid superhero movie, you know? I don't know if I'd give it more than that, but I thoroughly enjoy it. Like, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I can respect that. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite Marvel movies, but I will say the Captain America arc, as far as his 3 movies, I think is the best. Like, I feel like this one's the weakest of those, but it's still really solid and strong and you enjoy it. And then the second and third, I feel like, are like some of the most interesting, like Winter Soldier and Civil War are like some of the most interesting Marvel movies.
Yeah, I don't know if I've watched those since they came out either, so I'll discover it as we go.
Because I feel like some of the others like have weaker ones, whereas all 3 of those I'm like, they may not all be like favorites, but they're all like solid. Like I don't really have solid complaints about any of them. Whereas like really Iron Man 2 for me is like, nah. It's fun, it's good, but it's not as great. I know a lot of people don't like the third one, and then like Thor, I've already made my complaints about Thor, and that I don't necessarily love his first film especially. So I feel like Captain America's like the one that's like, they're all good movies. I don't have any issue with them. So anyway,
can I give my potential hot take?
Oh yes, please.
So I don't know how you feel about this. Captain America's ending. So this what we were talking about with his origin coming to the Avengers being really, really sad and depressing, right? When he at the very, very end gets to go back to Peggy and just like live his life. I know so many people hate that, and I say it's the greatest thing in the entire world. Because and I felt that so strongly when like the scene when he says the last line, you know, he's like, I had a date. I'm like, how can anyone be upset that he just got to go back and live with Peggy?
Sorry,
I can't
spoiler
even understand.
Alert.
I can't even understand. Well, yeah.
Sorry.
It's relevant because of like the origin and that like the origin and that line is like what it's like, oh my gosh, like he deserved it, guys. Like please. And I know the arguments against it and I get it, but I will just forever be on the side of it was beautiful and I love it.
I would say on that, I'm honestly relatively indifferent to it. I don't hate it. I probably would lean more liking it than hating it.
Okay.
But I just like don't feel super passionately about it. Like I'm just like sad to see him go. Right. And I think by then too, I had to like by that point in the story, I developed more feelings for other characters than I had for him by the end of it. And so I just kind of was like, I was just like, yeah, that's nice. And I definitely agree with you, though. I'm like, I lean more towards liking it because, I'm like, he deserved it. He went through so much. And the fact that he had this opportunity, I don't blame him for taking that. And now there's about 1 billion superheroes that are there. Like, it's fine. He does not need to be there. Like, there are plenty of other people now who can handle things in that time period. And so I respect his decision to go back,
right.
and I like it. I love it for him. And I do like the way he talks about it too, where he's like, when Sam asks him, like, do you want to tell me about her? And he's like, no, I don't think I will. And I think that's so cute. It's like, no, Precious. That's between me and her, basically. Precious. So... Love. Anyway, case.
Just wanted,
yes.
Yep, that was just.
I think that was a good throw in.
Yeah, just felt really strongly about it with the end of the movie. I was like, okay, no, this like it connects to the end too perfectly.
Yes,
like I just
it needs to be discussed.
Yes. So sorry if you hate it. I don't even feel like I don't even care if you're mad at me right now because like
I like it and it's fine. Good for you, Cariana. You're so principled.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Tori.
So, speaking of principles, our gospel principle that we're going to be discussing is believe in your knowledge, which sounds kind of strange, but let me explain. So sometimes we can find ourselves knowing that something is true, but it can still be difficult to believe in it. For example, we can know that God lives, but struggle to believe he will actually be there for us. In other words, we can have a testimony, but conversion is often more difficult to gain. President Russell M. Nelson, in his talk, Christ is Risen, Faith in Him Will Move Mountains, from April Conference of 2021, encourages us to allow the Lord to lead us on our journey of spiritual discovery. It is the choice to let him in that allows us to more fully benefit from a relationship with him and our own divine potential, rather than simply learning the gospel as a list of basic facts. This choice is what will more deeply change us. And I think Captain America, one of his greatest strengths is he has belief behind the knowledge he has. He has a knowledge of facts at his disposal, and he believes in them enough to follow through with them. He's not held back by doubt very often.
Yeah.
And not to say that he doesn't feel doubt. He has doubts. He's just not held back by them. He just follows through and just trusts enough to keep him going. And it's really amazing to watch. And it was really cool watching this time with that in mind and having thought of that. So, all right. So we start off in the modern day with S.H.I.E.L.D. discovering the jet craft, whatever plane that Captain America ended up crashing in order to save everybody. And they end up, we just see his shield. We don't see his like unconscious body in the ice, but we see his shield, and then it basically flashes back in time to 1942 or something like that, when Johann Schmidt, is that his name? Yeah. He is a man who ends up attacking Norway, and this town in Norway, and this man is like in this church-ish building, and he and another man are discussing, like, we gotta protect something, we don't know what they're talking about. Then Johann Schmidt comes in, and basically he ends up killing them and taking the Tesseract, which is this, as far as we know at this point, it's some sort of mythical power that has lied here for a very long time from the Norse gods. So that's all we really know at this point. Obviously, Thor did come out before this, so you have that connection and stuff, but we don't know a lot about what the Tesseract actually is at this point. But then it flashes over to a young man by the name of Steve Rogers, who is trying to get into the U.S. Army. It's during World War II, obviously, and he's a very small man. It's a little bit of an unsettling CGI situation.
It is a little unsettling.
Yes, with Chris Evans' head on this tiny little man's body.
Yeah.
So there's that. But anyway, we see him. He's trying to apply for the U.S. Army. And my first note comes from actually right as we see him. He has this conversation with this guy who's reading a paper. And the guy's like, a lot of men dying over there kind of makes you think twice about enlisting, huh? And he immediately says, nope. Like, he's just this tiny little guy, and he just immediately is like, nope. Like, he knows that he has a responsibility regardless of what that means for him, regardless of the sacrifice. So we're very, like, in that one brief interaction, we see exactly what kind of person we're dealing with, which I really love from a writing standpoint. And it's so empowering to see someone so small take his responsibility of lifting where he stands so seriously. In a talk in this last general conference called In the Path of Their Duty by Elder Bednar, he discusses a lot about how there's always those kind of more minor background characters in history and in the church who maybe don't stand out, they're nameless within the writings of history, but they really make a huge impact and do some of the most faithful and good acts, but we just don't see them. And so at this point, that's where Steve is. Like, he's in a position where he's struggling because of what other people are throwing at him, but he has that sense of responsibility and faith that he needs to do something and participate regardless of what it may mean for him. Then we further see this quality in him when he goes to the movie theater and he's about to watch a movie, but beforehand they have these kind of like advertisements, propaganda, thank you, encouraging people to do their part to help in the war effort. And there's this jerk in front of him who's just shouting like, get on with it, we don't care, like, move on. And Steve's trying to tell him like, hey, show some respect, like, this is important and stuff. And finally he just tells him to shut up, and the guy in front of him like stands up and turns around, and then it cuts to him, the guy beating Steve up in an alleyway behind the theater. And this is when we get the first iteration of the classic line, I can do this all day.
I can do this all day. And Steve's little skinny body.
Yes. His immediate, just like, I basically, again, seeing another quality about him, that he is willing to keep going at it. When it's a principle he believes in, he will keep going at it no matter how hurt he is, no matter how dangerous it is for him. It like goes back to he's willing to sacrifice anything for the greater good. Now we're seeing like he really means it. Like, we're seeing him getting hurt because of his principles, but he's still standing by them. And I just love that about him.
Yeah, for sure. One of the interesting things to me about this fight is that he doesn't do a whole lot of fighting back. Like, I think we maybe see him throw one punch, but for the most part, like the first, maybe we don't see him throw a punch. Maybe Bucky is the only one to throw a punch. I don't think we do. We only see like this guy hits him and he gets back up, and the guy hits him again and he gets back up. It's like he's getting back up so that this guy can hit him all over again. It's like, to me, it speaks to this idea of he's doing everything he can do. Like, he knows what he's capable of, and he knows he can't beat this guy up. If he throws a punch, like, the guy, like, he's not going to care. You know? It's not going to do anything. But what he can do is keep getting back up and show this bully that there is somebody out there who believes in the war effort and believes in showing respect for the soldiers and for everybody doing their part, and he'll keep getting back up for that no matter what you do to him. And I just love that his fight is just taking hits, and that alone is, again, it's like I said, just that idea of doing all that he can do, that he can take hits, and he'll do it all day.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, in that talk by Elder Bednar, he specifically talks about the heroes in the last wagon of every wagon train who are getting all the dust and muck stirred up in front of them, getting in their eyes and stuff, but they keep moving forward with the train, doing their part, being a part of that transition across the United States to a place where they know they need to be. And he talks about how they kept moving forward, worn and tired, footsore, sometimes almost disheartened, borne up by their faith that God loved them, that the restored gospel was true, and that the Lord led and directed the brethren out in the front. And I love, like, applying that to Steve. Like, we see that in, yes, he's taking all these hits from people in front of him, but he's being buoyed up by the fact that he does believe in God. We do get that hint a little later. He has a religious belief. He believes in the principles that his country is fighting for, and he believes that the people leading them into that war are also guided by a divine hand. And all of those things is what's keeping him able to take those punches and keep getting up, because he's hanging on to those things.
Yeah. He knows what's right, and he believes in it.
Yes.
Yeah. And that really is, it's the difference. I mean, knowing something, you can still back down from it. I really think it's that powerful combination of he knows it, but then he feels it. He believes it.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the push
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was a choice for him. Like, he chose to believe that. You never get the feeling that his principles, even though he stands by them so strong, at least I don't get the feeling that it's like necessarily, I guess it's natural to him, but like not necessarily like it's just part of his personality. Like, he has a choice that he's making every time he's standing by those principles. Like, I always get the feeling that his agency is behind it. It's not just he's like that. I think there's some level of that, obviously, for him to be able to do it, but he also, there's a choice behind him every time he gets back up. I think it's important to remember that it does start with a choice to believe in something. It's okay if it doesn't just happen for you.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
The choice needs to be
You get
there.
to choose who you are and what you stand for.
Exactly.
I think we see a little bit of proof of that decision making later when he's in the car with Peggy and he's like, oh yeah, I know this neighborhood. I got beat up in that alley and in that parking lot and over there. He's like pointing out all the places he's gotten beat up. And Peggy asks him, didn't you ever think to run from a fight? And he explains, he says, if you run, then they never stop chasing you. But if you fight back, if you push back, then you can, like, I don't remember exactly what he says, but you can show them something, right? And I think in that we see a little bit of, like, he's thought about this and he's decided. He said, I can run or I can fight. And fighting is the one that will accomplish what I want to.
Yes.
And show and make the impact that I want and show the beliefs that I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, just thinking about in the case of belief and choosing to believe, like figuring out if I believe in this, will it help me accomplish my desires? Which are desires, if they're in line with our divine potential that we're seeking them to be in line with, then of course we're going to choose to believe in God and Christ and in the restored gospel, because that's what's going to get us where we want to get. And so I think there is an aspect of seeing the bigger picture and choosing, what do I want in the end of this? So at the end of this fight, we meet his best friend Bucky, who comes in and saves him, and he's about to go off to war, and Steve's of course very jealous of this, but they decide to hang out one last night. There's like, I think it's like exhibition, is that that's the word for it. I don't know if it's a specific exhibition or anything, but Howard Stark is there. We get to see Iron Man's dad for a second, and he comes on and is showing off his new hover cars or whatever. And Bucky has set himself and Steve up on a double date, so that's what they're doing there, and Steve is not having a good time. So he ends up going, there's a recruitment station nearby, and he goes, of course.
He's a little obsessive.
Yes, trying again. He's tried 5 times already, using different names and information, which is illegal, but he just really wants to get in the action. And so
he's not principled in the case of honesty.
Yeah, no, at least not when it's standing in the way of bigger things for him, for sure. And while he's there, like thinking about going in, Bucky comes and finds him and is like, are you really gonna do this again? And they kind of have this little fight, which is interesting because again, we get to see a little bit more about Steve, and this is also when the Doctor sees what's inside of Steve's heart and becomes intrigued by him. And Bucky is like, why do you want to go so bad? Like, you wouldn't survive very long out there. Like, what are you trying to prove? And Steve ends up saying, there are men laying down their lives. I have no right to do anything less than them. This isn't about me. And it was really interesting watching, because that's a line that you like hear people say in movies, and it's like always with this connotation of like, okay, but actually they are making it about them and stuff. But this was one, when I was like watching it, I was like, I believe him. Like, he's not doing this for him. Like, I mean, there's always some aspect maybe of his own pride or whatever, but I'm like, genuinely, I think he really is doing this just for the principle of wanting to serve his country. Right. It's not about him. And Bucky's kind of like, yeah, like, you have nothing to prove. And I was like, I actually believe that he is coming from a place of wanting to do this for the right reasons. And the Doctor clearly sees that as well. Like, he's like, it's not about him. He's not treating it as being about him. He's treating it as being about the principle they're all fighting for. So we get to see the Doctor come in during Steve's medical inspection, the doctor comes in just having found all his different files from his different attempts to join the army, and he asks him about it. He's like, why did you want to try this many times, basically? And Steve's like, I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from. And he wants to fight against people who are oppressors. And it's interesting because it's coming from a place where he's lived in his whole life with people beating on him and pushing him down, and so many people would end up learning a sense of hopelessness from that, but he's chosen to keep believing, like we've said, in good principles and in things higher than himself, and that's what's kept him alive, and that's what's kept him wanting to serve even when he is pushed down so many times. And I think it's really impressive to watch. And the doctor agrees. So he says, I'm going to send you into the army. I have this new experiment that I've been working on, and the army wants me to test it out, and we're trying to find the right person to be our lab rat. Basically, he doesn't use that word, but that's what they're looking for, is someone to test this on, someone who they can really trust. And the doctor definitely has a lot of hope and belief that it could be Steve. So Steve ends up going out, and we see, again, a few more qualities in him. First of all, there's this scene where they're training and they're all running, and the leader of this group tells them that if they get this flag down, that they'll be able to ride in the truck the rest of the way, and they're all trying to climb the pole and they can't, and finally he has them all get back in line, but Steve just stays over there and goes and pulls out this little screw from the bottom, knocking the pole over and taking the flag. And so we see that he's not only a good-hearted person, he's also very intelligent, and he thinks outside of the box, which is a really big deal for a super soldier to have. We also see this great moment where the doctor and the general are having an argument about whether or not Steve or this other guy should do it. And this other guy is your classic soldier type. He's got a good body. He's really strong. He can do all of the exercises really well. But the doctor, of course, is all in Steve's corner. And so the general ends up throwing this fake grenade in and shouts out, "Grenade!" And everybody just scatters. And Steve just jumps in on top of it and says, "Everybody get out of the way." Sacrificing himself, showing not only that self-sacrificial attitude to what they're fighting for, but also it shows guts. That's what the doctor and the general are discussing right before, is guts, that we need guts, and he has that. And all of this is interesting to me because the doctor then explains later on that the serum that they're going to inject him with magnifies what's already there. And so it's easy, obviously he's a good-hearted, principled person, so it magnifies that. But it also magnifies his intelligence and wisdom. It also magnifies his guts and his willingness to do what needs to be done and his toughness. And so we're seeing that he really is a well-rounded person on the inside who will be able to be magnified to the best he possibly can be, and anybody could possibly be with this serum, rather than just being a big guy already.
I'll be the contrarian voice.
Okay.
Because we have this whole beautiful, wonderful list of all of Steve's positive qualities, which I absolutely agree with. He's a wonderful, amazing human being, and he deserved to be chosen for the super serum, and he was the perfect candidate, right? It's actually kind of funny to me that this colonel is so dead set on this perfect, strong soldier. I'm like, dude, his strength is gonna it doesn't matter. Yeah. What difference does it make? Literally, your whole test should be about personality and nothing else. But yeah, I love the moment of the grenade when the I didn't understand what he was getting at right away, to be completely honest, when he was like, it takes more than just where he says nice doesn't win wars, it takes guts, or I think is close to the line, and then just throws the grenade, and I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And then it took me a minute to realize that it showed that Steve had the guts, he has the niceness, and I was like, did he genuinely believe that this other soldier guy would jump on that grenade? No, you were looking for the wrong qualities, my friend. Most people are gonna run away from a grenade.
Yes.
So anyway, Steve is great. all the way back, I think I would say that if I were to choose one quality that is Steve's imperfection, it would actually be his pride. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily to a fatal point. I think he keeps it in check, and so it doesn't get to a point where it could become his downfall in any way. But I think he definitely does. And going back to that conversation with Bucky, you hear him say, like, in their little bickering, he says something like, what am I supposed to do? Like, collect metal scraps? Like, there are other ways for him to support the war effort, things where he would live longer and be able to contribute for a longer amount of time, right? But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to go fight, which is kind of connected to that sense of like glory and honor. And I don't think that's his sole purpose. I agree that like he has that sense of duty. There are men laying down their lives. Like he doesn't feel right letting other men die while he's perfectly safe back in the States, right? I believe that he feels that way. But then he also tells Bucky, as Bucky is leaving, he says, don't win the war until I get there. And that speaks to me a lot of like if you're wishing for a war to last longer for you to, you know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of that sense of like, you really should want the war to end like tomorrow, even if that means you never got to participate in it. But there's still that sense of like wanting to like say you did something and to be a part of it, even if that means like furthering the suffering of other people who are a part of it. So a couple of those small things do speak to me a little bit of his pride, and I think we see it for going on as well, just kind of in his confidence. And again, I think he uses it for good, so it's okay. But as we keep going, we'll see this sense of like he knows what's right, and he doesn't believe anybody else does, in a way, Like, he has decided what's right, and he just kind of figures, no, I know what's right, and therefore that's what's right. And that kind of has this sense of, like, there's a pride to that, in a way, And so, thankfully, in this movie, again, I don't remember other movies, so I'll be interested to see where this goes, and my beginning thoughts on it. But in this movie, he is always right. So it's fine. But if it happened that he wasn't and somebody else had the better idea, I don't necessarily see him listening to it super well, which I do feel like I can recall seeing, like, in Civil War, it becomes such a big deal because he says, no, this is right. And he's not going to listen to what anybody else has to say about it because he knows and he's decided. And so I do see this point of pride being something that is not a wholly positive quality and has the potential to lead him down to some inferior decisions.
Yeah, I could see that. It's so interesting that you said that, though. I'm listening to the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, and I was listening to a lot of it today, the second one, Well of Ascension, and in it, there's like this whole thing where there's this guy who's trying to be king, and he's kind of like, he's just like a little nerdy guy. So, like, we
love our little nerdy
like,
guys.
I know, we do. And he just is like trying to navigate this new role and stuff that he feels like he's able to do because he's learned a lot and he knows a lot and has thought a lot about policy and about a lot of these things that he's going to have to do as a king, as a politician. But there's this woman who basically, to keep things simple, she just knows a lot about leadership, and like it's part of her responsibility in this world to teach other people her knowledge as needed. And so part of her knowledge is she's read and like memorized basically all these biographies of these great leaders. And so she comes to him, and he's very like humble, and he like has his buddies that he's like, they call him by his nickname even in public, and like he is like, oh, like, what do you guys think? Like, always like wanting everybody's opinion. And she's like, if you're going to, the best leaders in history are willing to take advice, but as soon as they make a decision, they stick by it.
Right.
And if you're not going to do that, you're not a good leader, because you need to just like embrace, like, your responsibility is to make the decisions and make things happen. And if you don't, then that's when things crumble, is when people are too wavering in their decision making, or like listen to an unreasonable extent to other people without just sticking by their decisions. Right. So it's just interesting that you said that when he becomes the Avengers leader, like he has that quality that can be a flaw if it's taken in the wrong places, but also it's what makes him a good leader.
I'm
not saying that you weren't saying that, but it's just really interesting, like having just
that kind of connection,
and thinking about like even his flaw is what makes him a great leader.
Yes.
Like,
and I think it's one amazing. Of the remarkable things about him, because I would agree that is the closest thing he has to a flaw, and it is a vital quality in making him the leader of the Avengers.
It, like in general,
yes,
like,
which is why I added
too.
that. Like he keeps it in check, and I think that he could, in some case, perhaps not keep it in check, but he does, and so it's fine. But I do see it come out in a couple, like I said, those couple of statements that I don't fully love, where I'm like, okay, Steve, like, come on.
Come now.
But it works out.
Yes. In that role as a leader, you just have to be like that.
Yeah.
And there's kind of, in that same book and in some other discussions with this lady, she like mentions that sometimes as a leader you can't care what the people you're leading think about you, because you just need to lead them to the best place that they can be. Otherwise things are just gonna fall apart. So it's just it is really interesting, like that sometimes our flaws, I guess it's that weaknesses becoming strengths. You take those weaknesses and manipulate them just right and mold them so that essentially they are strengths. And it may lead, like for him, I think it will lead him to make some bad decisions.
Right.
But honestly, it also means that he's going to save a lot of situations.
Yeah. Overall, more good comes from it than bad, which is true of all of us. You know, we all make bad decisions, and so it's still admirable that he's able to stick to what he believes is right and just do that, you know. Whereas a lot of people make bad decisions not having that quality too, so it's just we all go down different paths, and that's his. But overall, he manages to use it for a lot more good than bad, for sure.
We continue to see that the Doctor really sees a lot of these good leadership and just good person qualities in him when he actually asks, like, why me? Why did you choose me to take the serum? And the Doctor explains basically, it magnifies what's already there. And he's like, I hope after this serum and everything that you keep what you have, not being a good soldier, but being a good man.
Right.
And I love that sentiment. It didn't make me like actually emotional, but like in my head thinking about it, I was like, wow, that's really empowering just to know that's one of the last things he says to him. And just thinking about where the rest of his life takes him, knowing that he really took that to heart of, I always want to be a good man and keep that part of myself. And he does, like, he's the same all the way through. He changes as far as his understanding of things and his wisdom grows, but it's not like he completely, like, he's the one character who really doesn't change all that much.
He just kind of
pretty much stays the same. He just like I said, gains more experience.
And honestly, I wouldn't call him a good soldier.
Especially
which is
at
kind of
that
interesting.
point.
He disobeys, he goes off on an unauthorized mission, and then later on we see him totally break from the U.S. government, right? Like, he is not tied to the government, he's not blindly obedient, he's not a good soldier, he's just a good man. So he really truly takes it to heart. Which
is amazing. And again, his principles that he sticks to, he hears that and he's like, I will do that. I will do that.
I believe that that's right. And so he does. He acts on it.
This episode has been divided into 2 parts. You have reached the end of part 1. Part 2 will be released the following Thursday. We hope you enjoyed the first half of our discussion. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at God in All Things Podcast. Additionally, if you are interested in seeing what Tori is currently reading, head over to her YouTube channel, Good Strong Words. Thank you again for listening. We hope you are having a wonderful day. Keep remembering to see God in all things, and we will see you next time. Bye!